Hello, true believers. Welcome back to another edition of BK's Bullets. You may remember me. My name is Jim Phantasm, and it's been a while, but I am back. And I want to start a new weekly series on this very channel, talking about some of the older DC animated films because I've never seen them. And I finally got around to watching one, and I loved it. And I had this brilliant idea. We're going to start reviewing these things. So here we go. We're going to kick it off with this first week's video talking about Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the movie, I just want to say make sure you do Brent a favor, comment, rate, and subscribe to his channel because he's been putting out some excellent content lately, and hopefully you guys like this as well. This is definitely, from my perspective, you may or may have forgotten about me. I am a dabbler when it comes to comic books, usually curated from Brent. I was a somewhat avid reader of the New 52 for about a year or so, but ultimately it seems like DC went in a little different direction and they brought back a lot of the stuff that a new guy like me just didn't understand, and I backed out. I still do read comics whenever Brent gives them to me, although thanks to COVID, I haven't seen him in almost a year. But through the magic of internet and through the magic of Brent's Voodoo account, I now have access to a litany of DC-related animated films. So that's what the idea of this series is going to be. It's going to be some new content for you guys from me on his channel, talking about my thoughts on some of these DC animated films. And in no particular order, rhyme, or reason, I just selected Mask of the Phantasm. I had no idea what it was about. And I was surprised to see that it actually came out in 1993. And it was the first animated film from DC that was actually in theaters. Now, unfortunately, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like DC gave this film a fair shake in theaters. And as a result, it lost money. But ultimately, when it came out to VHS or DVD, whatever the hell they had back then, it definitely made back its money and then some. And I think that's why you don't see a lot of these DC films in movie theaters anymore. I mean, outside of COVID, of course. Largely because I think DC didn't get a very good impression from this film. But in everything I've read, whether it be critical receptions, my own personal viewing of it, or other people's thoughts on it, it is widely regarded as an amazing piece of film, and I loved it. I think for me, jumping back into this whole idea and coming up with this, which is totally unsolicited by Brent, of doing a weekly show for you guys on his channel, it's actually a really good pick to start with, which I think makes it kind of funny because, considering the lineage of everything. So, Batman Mask of the Phantasm was awesome for a lot of reasons. I really think the animation style holds up particularly well. I remember maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, I decided to jump back into some old cartoons from when I was a kid. And that experiment lasted about a week because I was getting a headache because the animation quality was subpar. And I don't mean the drawing, I mean the frame rate. And a lot of these older cartoons run at a very jittery frame rate. Thankfully, Mask of the Phantasm ran very, very well. As far as I could tell, it was 30 frames a second or, 28, whatever the standard television recording is. As a gamer, 30 FPS is kind of the standard. I didn't notice any hiccups or anything like that. And I liked it because I think it holds up well. And also, watching it, it fit the entire screen, my 16:9 TV downstairs. Obviously, it wasn't really HDR or anything like that. 4K didn't exist, but it's pretty and it looks great and the colors are vibrant, and I think they did a really good job of making Batman stand out in a dark environment. And I think they did a really good job with the sound more than anything. I was really impressed by how amazing the sound quality was. Very distinct sound effects. It seems like they put a lot of time into the sound production. down to even the footsteps, glasses clinking, you hear ice cubes when characters are drinking in the background, and running it on a 5.1 sound system, it sounded phenomenal, and I loved it. So, in terms of like, does it meet today's exciting, super fancy HDR 4K quality standards? No, but it holds its own, and I think that says a lot for it. I feel like this was a very forward-thinking production, and I think that when DC made this, they knew they had something special on their hands, and I'm glad they put so much time and effort into this cartoon because it holds up. And here we are now in 2020. Can you believe that? This came out in 1993. So, and it still looks great, and I really, really enjoyed it. So, what I think is so cool about this story is that it is much as a what's going on in Batman's current life as it is a flashback of his past. And I don't know how much of this is canon or not. There are so many Elseworlds and other variants that DC likes to do for their cartoons and for their various comic books. But this particular universe of Batman, Bruce Wayne obviously established himself as the Batman fighting crime, and he is falsely accused of being a murderer for crimes he didn't commit. There's this new villain in town known as the Phantasm, who wears this really cool looking metal skull mask and all this clouds of smoke billowing around him. He's got this weird looking kind of hook arm thing that he uses to cut and beat people up. And he's basically going around killing mobsters. Batman falsely accused because, who else is crazy enough to run around in a costume in Gotham City? Well, of course, Batman. And interestingly enough, Jim Gordon actually stands up and says, there's no way this is Batman. And unfortunately, that story arc fell kind of flat. The false accusation of Batman does lead to a really cool action scene, but ultimately it doesn't really amount to anything. And I was a little disappointed. I felt like this was a really cool topic they could have explored, and they chose not to. I could definitely see where they drew a lot of source material, particularly from Batman Year One, particularly in the construction scene in this movie, where Batman actually kind of falls apart. And there's actually a few times in here where Batman, either as the Batman we recognize him now, or when it's Bruce Wayne wearing a ski mask, starting to become Batman, do we really start to see kind of the origins of him and him kind of working through this stuff? And I love that. My two favorite variants of Batman are the nitty gritty, hard, chiseled veteran Batman who has been doing this for a very, very long time. And I also equally love the origin tales of Batman when he's young and dumb and doesn't know what he's doing. And this cartoon does a really good job of jumping back and forth in time. But in this universe, Batman actually falls in love with a woman and proposes to her. And in that, realizes he can't be both a Batman and a married man. And there are a lot of scenes in the movie where you see his concentration gets broken, he gets beat up, he lets villains get away. And despite all that, there's a really powerful scene where he goes to his family's gravestone, and he's talking and pleading. He's pleading to his family saying, I can't do this anymore. Please release me. As if they made him become Batman. But it was just such a powerful scene because you saw the guilt that he still carried. Feeling helpless, not being able to stop them from getting murdered. And, his plea to them of like, let me please go live a normal life. And ultimately him wrestling with that, throughout the whole movie, because it keeps, the time keeps jumping back and forth. Ultimately, he does go through with this engagement and he does propose. Unfortunately, through some weird circumstances, I don't want to give too many spoilers away in case you haven't seen it, like me. So there are people out there who haven't seen it, believe it or not. But through a series of circumstances, the engagement's called off, and he kind of goes back into being full Batman mode that we recognize. More modern Batman. Not really time for women. If he does, he's a womanizer. He's not really looking for a relationship. He's just kind of out there to have fun, so to speak. And then Batman is his full-time job. So, what I liked about this movie is that exploration of, him and this suffering that he puts himself through and this guilt that he has. And it's cool to watch him early on and fail. Not, particularly another really powerful scene for me was when he finally realizes that he needs to be scary. He goes, I know how to fight because he's fighting crime now with a ski mask. He's like, I know how to fight. I've got all these cool little gadgets. He's got his little utility belt. He's got ninja stars. He hasn't themed anything yet. They're not the Batarang. It's just a ninja star. But he's going out there and he's taking care of things. But he realizes that no one takes me seriously. They all laugh at me. And when he stumbles on the idea of becoming the Batman and he puts the costume on and he puts the cowl on for the first time, you don't actually see it. You see over his shoulder and you see Alfred, his tried and true sidekick, butler, father figure, standing there, and he has this look of fear on his face, and he's terrorized when Batman puts the cowl on. And I think a lot of us now, we're so used to seeing Batman in movies and in comics and cartoons, whatever. We've kind of just accepted that this is, I don't want to say normal, but like, it's like, oh, it's a guy dressed like a bat. Of course, that's Batman. But in that scene, the first time Alfred sees Batman like that, it was really cool. And to see the look of fear on his face when Batman's like, okay, now they're going to take me seriously. And he looks evil and menacing. And it was really cool. So if you like those, if you're really jonesing for like early Batman stuff, I think this movie really answers the mail. But then it does this really cool time jump where it kind of jumps, like I said, between present day and past. Batman gets involved in, being a detective, kind of stuff we're tried and true, seeing him, all his cool gadgets. He's got he's got the Batmobile, he's got the flying Batwing, I think it's called, the actual ship. He's got the motorcycle. He's got all the gear and cool tech to get out of pretty much any single instance of, danger or whatever. And ultimately it's this tale of him coming to terms with loving and loss. And I really liked it. There are some really cool villains in here that you'll never, ever probably see again. Maybe, I don't know. A lot of these one-off mobster types that, I mean, obviously they're dead. I don't know if there's flashbacks with them in other movies, but, seeing this dark underworld where Batman falls in love with a woman who, unfortunately, her father is involved in this, and him seeing firsthand as Bruce Wayne kind of what's happening to the family and how the family's trying to make a quick buck, essentially. And everything just falls apart because the mob wants their money and they can't pay. And it's, his love life gets basically, shredded because of these series of unfortunate circumstances. The actual Phantasm thing, who was the Phantasm, I think it's probably pretty clear to most people early on what's happening. It was a neat surprise because it's one of those things where, like, from a 10,000 foot level, you look at it and you're like, I know exactly what's going to happen. But it was interesting because the way the animation, and particularly Kevin Conroy as Bruce Wayne, that voice actor, brings the character to life in such a unique way that when Batman, the character, actually puts everything together, and you kind of already know it as a fan or just, and I've never watched any of this, like I said, so I figured it out pretty quick, but not that I'm a genius. When Batman realizes what's going on and he kind of puts it all together, the look of terror and disappointment and frustration and horror all in his face, and the way that Kevin Conroy brings that all together is amazing. So there's some really standout scenes in this movie that I feel like are really, ground truths of like who Batman is. You think he's a suave guy. You think he's always got a leg up on everybody. Well, guess what? He doesn't necessarily always have a leg up on everybody. And, you think he's cool and calm and collected and he gets out of every situation. Well, he doesn't in this one. He gets shot up pretty bad. He's about to be identified. He's about to be exposed. And, through some very fortunate luck, he manages to get away. So yeah, it was good. I really, really like this movie. I don't know really, I've watched some of the other DC movies more recently with Brent. We watched the Superman cartoon, Red Sun, and I thought that was good. but not in the way that this was good. This just has such a distinct level of polish and sound effect and heart. And I'll be really curious as I go on this journey with you guys over the next, I don't know how long will the series go. I think Brent's got 43 movies under DC Animated in his Voodoo account. So you'll be seeing me for a while, but I'll be really curious as this journey continues to see at what point does DC either not invest as much in the production quality or what. But this movie just was really, really well put together. And I can't say enough good things about it. So I'm not going to give any ratings. I'm just going to say major thumbs up for me on this particular one. I think you guys owe it to yourself to go back and watch it, whether you've seen it before or you're like me, you haven't. It was a really gripping tale, and it sheds a new light on Batman. So thumbs up on that one for sure. Hope you guys like this video. Hope you like this format. I will be evolving and growing as time goes on, but I owe it to Brent to put good stuff on his channel because the guy does good stuff, and I like comics, and I don't really have a very good venue to talk about them. So I'm going to live vicariously through his Voodoo account and through his YouTube channel. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this particular video, but there will be more. I hope you guys found this informative. Leave some comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to more great content. That's it for me this go around. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys in the funny pages.